get that. And please forgive me, but I'm working between 3 computers here. I feel like a DJ at the club. Let's see, here we go.
Everett.
What you know about that, brother?
I know a little bit. I'm an 80s baby.
Oh, okay. So the question was posed through via email for those that weren't here when we spoke about it. Question was asked, can the reactive mind be connected to the brown germ? And I said to myself, this is a wonderful subject. This was actually something I considered a while back. And I guess I just never, I probably have some notes around here somewhere. What I try to do, I'm trying to organize my notes into one notebook so that I can always go to the notebook. I can go to my index and know exactly what I'm trying to find. There we go. Get that back. Can everyone see my screen? Yes, no?
No, sir, it's not up yet.
Okay,
No,
yeah.
sir.
It was up, but
It was up. Yeah, I had to let someone in and then I hit the wrong button. Okay, let me go here, and then how about now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Meeting is being recorded.
All right. Oh. Before we start, I came across this quote by the minister, and it says that Farrakhan does not come into the valley to divide people who believe in God, but to show those who believe in God that if you truly believe in God and seek to understand what you believe, you will find a way to connect things that appear to be diverse and different. And I thought this was a wonderful quote, given that our goal here is to connect or marry the supreme wisdom with the supreme technology. It also is in line with page 90 of Message to the Black Man, where it says, before you can say that your religion is true, and I'm paraphrasing it, you have to study the scriptures of the other religions, correct? Has everyone seen that before?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Heard it
Yes, sir.
at least.
And I would think that that would be relevant because if we take the time to study the other scriptures and the other religions, then it allows us to communicate with a diverse group of individuals. In the Dianetic language, I would say the fourth dynamic. If we're dealing with the fourth dynamic, then we have to deal with the multitudes of religious beliefs, ideologies, and practices of that fourth dynamic, correct?
Yes, sir.
So it allows us to be in ARC with multiple individuals, and we can still communicate with them on their level of spirituality. And one thing I have noticed and experienced is that when you can communicate with someone on their level of spirituality, and they know you're a Muslim, that will actually produce a tremendous amount of ARC, because people automatically think because we're Muslim that it's all about just one belief and everything else is not relevant. But when you can speak to a Buddhist on their Buddhism, or you can speak to the Baha'i on their faith, you can speak to different religious groups, there's a great deal of respect. And that's another reason why I believe that the world, and I'm speaking generally, has such respect for the minister, because no matter where he goes, he can communicate with groups on many different levels, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
That's correct.
I actually came across this quote accidentally on purpose. Sister Kemba.
Assalamu alaikum. Sir, can you, before we get started, can you actually give us the definition of a brown germ?
Oh, that's what the whole topic is going to be about tonight. The brown germ is, I mean, there's various places in the wisdom that talks about the brown germ. So basically, we're talking about the black germ and the brown germ. I'm gonna give an interpretation based on what I have found in the teachings, and I'm gonna kind of give my opinion, but my opinion is gonna be based on what we've been given in what Message to the Black Man, Our Savior Has Arrived. Okay, but the whole conversation tonight will be about the brown germ. Sister Zaki, I see you came in. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam. Yes, sir. Assalamu alaikum, family.
Were you were the one that sent the email that asked this question about the reactive mind and the brown germ, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't losing my mind. And live and direct from the mothership, it's Sister Angela Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum. Yes, sir. They just dropped you off before they dropped me off. For praise to Allah. Happy Savior's Day, family.
David's Day. Let's see who else came
Happy
in.
Savior's Day.
Sister Patricia. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam. I'm running late, so I'm be off screen for a minute.
That's okay. Not a problem.
Thank you, sir.
And Sister Ania. Assalamu alaikum, Sister Ania.
Walaikum salam, sir. Walaikum salam, family.
All right. Glad that you're here. You made it. Let's see. Okay. Now, we're going to start with the lessons. Good place to start. Stable datum. Question number 33 says, what is devil? Answer, a grafted man, which is made weak and wicked, or any grafted live germ from original is devil. So this is the starting point. Okay. Now, comparing this or relating this to the tech, if you look up the word grafted in the dictionary, you're going to come up to a word. The word is going to be implant. Okay. And the word implant, I guess you would call it, is synonymous with grafted. When you actually study the word grafted, it's a term that's used, and I'm gonna have the agricultural scientist drop some wisdom on this if he could, brother Ahmad. When you graft, you can take two different plants and cut and graft the plants together, correct?
That's my understanding, particularly with trees, that particular method,
Okay.
and branches.
Okay, yes, sir. So in Dianetics, the word implant, we could say is synonymous with the concept of the nurse that stuck the needle in the brain on the island of Patmos. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so if we use Patmos as a demo kit, and if anyone doesn't understand what a demo kit is, just raise your hand. I'll explain what a demo kit is. But the nurse on Patmos sticking the needle in the brain is like a physical representation of, in the Dianetic language, we could say, could be like invalidation. Does that make sense? Because when we invalidate someone, we're producing what's called an ARC break. Or an—
Pardon me, sir. I was reading in the chat. I missed that last point.
What does it say in the chat? Let me put the chat on this computer.
It was an excerpt from page 90 on Message to the Black Man. But
Oh,
right
you.
before you asked the last question, I missed the context of it.
Okay, the needle in the brain?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Sticking a needle in the brain, we know that from the perspective of our lessons, the nurse would stick the needle in the brain if there was a black baby that was born, correct?
Right.
Yes, sir.
Because the concept was to save the lighter and kill off the darker. And then the more you kill off the darker, in the language of genetics, you're killing off the dominant and sparing the recessive, yes?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That is similar to also when you take the truth and you kill off the truth in order to save falsehood. Eventually you kill the truth off and then all you have is falsehood left, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So when you look at, in my humble opinion, when you look at the lessons represent formulae and equations. And then when you understand that, you can apply these to the multitude of different areas of mathematics and science and basically anything that we decide to study. Each individual that studies the supreme wisdom, I believe, you will see in that the wisdom what you need to see to bring forth your purpose for being. Okay, when I look at the lessons, I see math and I see science. Someone else might see accounting. Someone else might see agriculture. I think that we'll see in the lessons according to our purpose. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
So now sticking the needle in the brain on another level, when you're dealing with ARC breaks or invalidations, when you invalidate someone, that's like sticking a needle in the brain. Because if you look back on our time track, look back at our history individually, it was invalidations in our past that hindered us from completing things that we had decided to complete or stopped us from things that goals that we had desired to pursue and achieve. But that invalidation produced doubt in us. And that doubt actually caused us to stop forward progress on achieving our goals. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So that individual verbally, they stuck a needle in the brain. Okay. Sister Bernice. You're on mute.
Yes,
You have your hand up?
yes, I put the raised hand feature because you said if anybody didn't understand demo kit to put the raised hand up, so I
Okay,
did.
not a problem. Sister Bernice, have you ever did coursework at actually in the org, in the course room?
Not for a very long time.
Okay, but you have in the past, correct?
Yes,
Do you remember on that table, there was like a little bowl and there was like little objects in that bowl?
yes, I remember that.
Okay, so whenever there was a topic, whenever you produced a sign that you didn't understand, the course supervisor might come over and ask you some questions and then have you demo it with those objects in the bowl. Have you ever did that?
Yes,
Okay, so that is a demo kit. And what it is it's taking the concept that you have a misunderstood in, you have lack of mass, and you're using the objects to give mass to that concept. Does that make sense?
yes, sir, that does. Thank you.
Okay. And so what we say is, we say that the universe is Allah's demo kit. So instead of using bowls with the glass trinkets and pieces of whatever, we can look at our problem book, we can look at the atom, we can look at the planets, we can look at the solar system, and we use mathematics and physics as the demo kit in order for us to understand, because we are students in God's universe, correct?
Yes.
Okay. That's why I might refer to the problem book, or I might refer to Adam, I might refer to something in science. Those are our demo kits.
Okay, yes, sir. I just wanted to make sure I was clear. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. You're very welcome. Go ahead, Sister Ania. You're on mute, Sister Ania.
Okay, am I off mute?
Yep.
All right. As you were explaining about the needle in the brain, and the grafting process and the implant, and it made me think of the concept, or I guess as another demo kit, when in scripture it talks about Herod was looking for baby Jesus, and the instruction went through the town to kill all of the boy babies and spare the female. And so I look at, coming up to modern day with the killing of Black boys and sparing the female, where the male represents that protective force in the society, and the different methods that they've used to kill off the male. Years ago, we used to say that the male is either spaced out on drugs, or he's a wino, or he's in the army, or he's in prison. So they have killed off our males, as well as literally killed them. They've also killed them spiritually, mentally, morally, which has caused the ARC break between the Black male and the Black female. And then without her protector, the woman is then left as open prey for the enemy, the conqueror, to come in and implant his ideas as well as his seed into the woman. So I was just using that as a demo kit.
Oh, most definitely, most definitely. For those that have not read the book, and I'm actually in the process of reading it, haven't finished it yet. There's a book called The ISIS Papers by Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, and she speaks about the fear of white genetic annihilation. And that's one of the reasons why the Black man is hunted down, and during slavery, that was one of the things they would do. They would cut off his genitals, cut off that, because that was the weapon. Contained in that is the weapon that can actually eliminate that whole process for them. But if you haven't read it, it's a great book to have in your library. That's their biggest fear. That's the biggest fear. Let's get back to where we at here. Here we go. Okay. Now, could the brown germ have ARC or be the equivalent with the reactive mind? That's the question, right, Sister Zakia?
Yes, sir. I feel like the brown germ is the equilibrium to the Black germ, because everything has a polarity. And so I think that's the opposite of, that's just my mind. But yes, sir.
You're saying the opposite of the Black germ.
Yes, sir. Like God, devil, true, false, boy, girl. Yes, no, brown germ, Black germ. That's how I feel.
Okay. Well, we'll see
about it.
We'll see where this takes us.
Okay.
Where this takes us. Now, life germ. Study guide number 2 is kind of like the starting point. Again, stable datum. And part of the reading material for study guide number 2 was Surah 22, ayat number 5. And it says, "O people, if you are in doubt about the resurrection, then surely we created you from dust, then from a small life germ." So now, when you look at the word small life germ, in Arabic, the word is nutfa. So small life germ. Can we say, or would it make sense if we said this small life germ is connected to our concept of DNA? Could we start there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that's where we'll start. Okay,
For the sperm.
right. So you have, and then there's another ayat that talks about the creation of man from an extract of worthless water, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so now if we look at it, an extract of worthless water, the word of means from, correct?
Yes, sir. That's one.
So an extract of worthless water, we're talking about two elements. You got worthless water, and then you have something that's in the worthless water, correct?
Right.
Yes.
Okay, so on a level of, from the biological level, you have what's called the seminal fluid, which works as the medium to transport the sperm from point A to point B, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so man is created of an extract of the worthless water. And that physical body is what carries the genetic material, yes?
Right.
Okay. So we're going to start this whole process from the perspective of, we're talking about DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid. Okay. Now, when you look at the lesson, what is devil? It's talking about anything grafted from original, correct?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So for the sake of this concept, I was looking at the original germ being the black germ, DNA without errors, and the brown germ being DNA with errors.
Right.
Okay. Are we good so far? Would that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay. And in the language of genetics, when you talk about the word error, you're talking about mutations, yes? Okay. So that's the premise we're going to go on. We're going to look at the original, the black germ as being the genetic material without error. And we're going to look at the brown germ from the perspective of the DNA that has errors in it. Okay. So what could be the meaning of brown with respect to the brown germ? Okay. And I already said, what are the errors with respect to DNA? Those are called mutations. And we're going to get, so tonight's going to be a kind of like a class in genetics, but it's also going to be a class in Dianetics, because this is all going to be connected together. Sister Jocelyn, yes, ma'am.
Brother Luke, as you're speaking, you're making me think about in our lessons where we talk about the half original. I'm wondering how the half original relates to the brown germ as well.
Well, half original, based on what I've heard the minister say, and if anyone has it's close to the exact phrase, or you have a memory of this, please share it. But he talked about half original as meaning half knowledge. That was one way he explained it, having half knowledge. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Columbus was half original. Musa half original. But he gave one explanation of half original as being half learned, half doing things with half knowledge, correct? Now, another way of looking at, if you look at it from the perspective of just biology, could a person that has a black father and a white mother or vice versa be considered half original?
Yes, sir. In one sense.
In one sense. But as long as you have a drop of black blood, guess what?
You black.
Okay. But now, that's if your focus is on the physical body. But our origin is not in this physical body, correct?
Right.
Okay. Our origin, if you look at it from the perspective of Message to the Black Man, and I want to say it's page number 9, I'm not 100% sure. The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that first God who created himself, and I'm paraphrasing it, the first God who created himself in triple darkness is no longer here, correct?
Yes, sir.
Right.
He
Yes,
says, but his person exists in his people today, right? Now, from another perspective, if you look at the word person And if you clear that term and dig into aspects of the word person, it'll bring you to persona, and then sona is talking about sound and frequency and vibration. Does that make sense?
Wow, yes, sir.
Okay.
Layers.
So now when you look at the first God is no longer here physically, but his person exists in his people today. And we know that the Savior represents the perfected representation of that force and power in modern time, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Dianetics says that the time track is how old? How old is the time track in Dianetics?
76 trillion? No.
No, you're right.
76 trillion years.
L. Ron Hubbard said that the time track is 76 trillion years old. So now the question is, based on what the Most High Elijah Muhammad has said, if the first God is no longer here, but his person exists in his people today, then how did his person travel through time to be in you and I today?
Through genetics and thought.
Through genetics and thought. And when you get to the root of genetics, and when you get into atomic structure, when you start getting into what's called organic chemistry and atoms and quarks, you're getting into vibration and you're getting into frequency, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So we're dealing with energy, and in that energy exists that now the energy has no point in space. You can't locate it, but it has the ability to come to conclusions and to speculate, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. In the language of Dianetics, that's called the life static. You can never find it.
Lukman,
Yes, who's speaking?
this is Brother Abdul Iman Muhammad.
Oh, yes, sir. Good to meet you, brother. Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Wa alaikum salam, sir. I read an article by Mother Tanetta Muhammad a few years ago, and she said that before the first God was personified, we traveled in orbs. O-R-B.
Yes, sir.
Orbs, which is a energy field that has intelligence. I'll stop right there, sir.
Yes, sir. That's
Thank you.
exactly what we're talking about. That's exactly what we're talking about. So can we see the relationship between our teachings and what they teach in the text?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so far so good. And thank you, Sister Belinda, for putting up the definitions.
You're welcome, sir.
Okay. Black and brown germ. Okay, so we're going to start with the germ of life. We're going to say that's the DNA. In the language of genetics, the word graft is synonymous with mutation. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, what does mutation actually mean? We're going to get to it. So now, if we consider the black germ to be that which has no errors, no mutations, and the brown germ contains errors, why does this always happen here? Okay, give me 1 second. Can we gain a deeper understanding of genetics, Islam, and Dianetic text? So that's what we're going to marry tonight. Genetics, Dianetics, and Islam, all in the same topic. And then the question is, can genetics be a demo kit used to understand aberration? So we know that after learning Islam is mathematics and mathematics Islam, it stands true, correct?
Yes, sir.
But we also know that the word mathematics can be used to represent a multitude of different divisions of mathematics, correct?
Right.
So mathematics is the same as saying trigonometry, correct?
Yes, sir. A-type.
It's a type of mathematics. Calculus is a type of mathematics. That means in mathematics, through the law of substitution, we could take the word trigonometry and put it into question or problem number 13, because the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said that scientists speak in the language of formulae, correct?
Yes,
sir.
And when you deal with formulae, you have an equation, and for every input you produce, you get a specific output, correct?
Right.
So if we say a mathematical theology, problem number 13, or we could say equation number 13, produces a certain type of output. But now we take genetics. Is genetics a certain form of mathematics?
Yes, sir.
I would agree, yes.
So can we say after learning genetics, which is Islam, and Islam is genetics, it stands true, and you have to learn to use your genetic theology in its proper term? Can we say that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we're using our lessons as formula. And we're inputting the data into the formula, into the problems and the lessons, so that we can produce different outputs. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Grafted germ.
Hmm.
Graft is a term that's used in chemistry. And one of the meanings is, could everyone just go on mute, please? That's some background information, noise somewhere. Thank you. So in chemistry, it means to attach a chemical unit to a main molecule. Now I'm going to try to paint a picture, and I want to see if anyone has any cognitions. In chemistry, you can have a molecule, and the molecule by itself could just exist without having any type of an effect. And then you attach what's called a functional group to that molecule, and that functional group will actually change the chemical properties of that molecule. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
You can take out the one functional group, you can plug in another one, same molecule, but it changes the molecule. Okay, that's just a little bit of background in chemistry. But now when you take, if you take that same concept, what if we say that you represent the molecule, and what if we say the functional group represents a valence? So if you take one valence and connect it to you, does that not produce a different dramatization?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So can you see how you can look at chemistry and use it as a demo kit to understand aberration?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You and I bump into certain people. If we take on, if they say or do something that kind of gets under our skin, isn't that restimulation?
Yes, sir.
Did we not just take on an aspect of their character?
Yes, sir.
Did it not just change who we are for that moment in time?
Yes, sir.
Right. Like that movie Fallen.
Oh, that's perfect, brother. That's perfect. That's perfect with Denzel, right?
Yes, sir.
They just would touch and they would pass on the energy from person to person, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Right.
so Fallen is actually a good demo kit. For those that don't know, there's some of us that are big on movies, and I love looking at movies. Mother Tanetta Muhammad once said that there's scientists in Hollywood and they put the truth in the movies.
That's right.
So some of us get caught up on the special effect, but those that are awake are looking at the movie saying, "Oh, did you just see that? That's out. That's out of the problem book. That's such so and so." Correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Sister Patricia, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Did you say that when someone reactive minded and we respond to it, we're taking on their ways?
If we come in contact with someone and they either say something or do something that restimulates us, okay, one way of looking at that person is, if they're restimulating us, on one level, we're taking on the valence of someone from our past, correct?
Okay. Okay.
This person can either stimulate something in us or they can remind us of someone. So we're in present time, but we're stuck in the time track at the same time. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. I just want to clarify. I heard that.
Okay.
Correct. Thank you.
No, you're very welcome. So we're using the molecule as like a demo kit. See, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said it like this. I've said it 1,000 times. Page 48 to page 51, Torchlight for America. He says, put Allah at the center of your education, and whatever you study it from the perspective of you're studying yourself. So when I'm studying my math and my science, I'm looking at this, okay, how can I understand something about myself based on what I'm studying? How can I understand something about Allah based on what I'm studying? And for me, in doing it that way, the concept becomes easier to understand, and then it shifts it from short-term to long-term memory. So we're studying the molecule, we're studying the atom, but we're studying each one of us, because I think as this information comes up, can we think of someone from our past that when we take on that valence, we already know that we're going to act a certain way if someone comes at us a certain way?
Well, not always, I do a lot.
Mm-hmm. You know, and I said this once before, you know, and this is for everyone in the room. All of us, we have a certain personality and a character when we're amongst one another. But if someone comes at us the wrong way, our unclearedness is manifested very quickly, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Everything's for real. Sister Angela.
Yes, sir. Assalamu alaikum again. Happy Savior's Day.
Salam.
So for the sake of information, I like to throw this in there. When I was just talking about the panther yesterday, the panther in the house and how we react to that panther. So how would we marry this too? Because if we are this atom and we are being asked how we react to someone or something being introduced, we can see from the video that the one that didn't react and act like the panther wasn't there was eaten, basically. So it gives credence, for me anyway, that it requires some rational thought.
That's a good comment. And I would respond in this manner. That panther, let's go back to what the minister said in Divine Destruction of America. He said grief is going to be a tool that's going to be used in the chastisement by Allah, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the Black Panther we have could represent our own reactive mind. And those of us that choose not to respond to that Black Panther, it would be, to me, the same as saying, I'm not even going to I'm not going to deal with my reactive mind. I don't believe in that. Some of us don't want to go back and touch on the past. It's in the past. It doesn't affect me now. But guess what? That Black Panther is going to get keyed in and eventually is going to become activated. All of us, if we look back at the past couple of years, all of us have been going through some very trying emotional times, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Lots of ups and downs.
Lots of ups and downs. Now, ask yourself the question, where do you think you would be right now if you did not have the tech to kind of buffer some of the things that you've experienced?
I don't know.
Did you want a response?
If everyone has a response, that's fine. If you have a response.
I could likely have been not even alive.
Okay.
And if I were, I definitely would not be where I am, which is a very good place in terms of mental homeostasis and other things.
Now look at that. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan told us back, and I believe that lecture was from I want to say either 94 or 96. I get the 2 years mixed up. He said back then that Allah was going to use grief during the chastisement. So he warned us that grief was coming. And then he's the door through which we receive the tech that will allow us to exist in a time of grief without being consumed by the grief. And it reminds me of the scripture in the Bible where it says that they were in the oven of affliction, but there was not one like the Son of Man in there with them, keeping it cool. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
So for some of us, and I always go back specifically to what comes to mind is Brother Robin. Last year, when my mother passed, Brother Robin happened to call me, the day after, and straight wired me. And I don't think I had, the only emotion I have shown was when we took my mother's ashes and she wanted her ashes to be buried with her mother. But Brother Robin straight wiring me that Thursday, from that day to this day, I have no problem speaking about my mother and her passing. And I can attribute some of that, by Allah's grace, to him straight wiring me the day after. Now, over the course of the past 2 or 3 years, I know for a fact, if I did not have the teachings in conjunction with the tech, I probably wouldn't be here right now. The last 3 years have been the 3 most difficult years of my entire life, but you would never know it. And I think that goes for everyone that's here. We've gone through some tremendous trials.
Yes, sir.
But because we have been striving to adhere to our Islam, and by Allah's grace, the tool that we were given through the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, that we're still here and we can talk about what we're talking about. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Sister Denise.
Yes, sir. The cognition I had was when the minister went on the mental ward in the mental hospital to visit some of the believers after the messenger was gone. And what the brother said to him was, the messenger didn't lie to us, did he? And to a demo kit of going back to the vomit that you come out from. And then you find yourself back there because of grief, or the person that you had looked up to is no longer there, and people are talking about him and talking about perhaps he was crazy, and so now you crazy for believing that. And I was just, that mixed feelings and controversy that that was bringing to my mind of all of the trauma that occurs, and people end up on one of those wards in the hospital to help balance the mind, because it's like, I can't believe this. I can't believe that the messenger lied to us. And then another brain said, well, yeah, he did, because he died and he no longer here. And I just think this is a real good way to sort of clear up some things. And then when the minister stood back up and he brought the teachings back to some people that had never heard of it, and then some that did, and then they decided to come back to the nation, that it didn't finish with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. That was just a stage of development, and he was creating someone, which was the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, to explain in his mathematic theology, his language, which I think he mastered English, to explain to us what has happened to us and why we are reacting in such a way. that was one way out, the cognition that I was thinking. Another was that shot. Another was, when you are injecting something into people that they don't even know what's in it. What is it creating in the individual with all of these chemicals in balance into the blood system of someone? So those are two cognitions that I had as you all were talking, and about how do we stay, and then you won't be aberrated, but how do you, to stay not being aberrated, or having that reactive mind always, coming at you. This is that tool that the minister said for us to use. So I mean, I was having cognition, all of them going off at the same time, but I was trying to make sure. So what do you think about that, Brother Lukman?
Well, that's a whole lot of information there, sister.
Yes, sir.
A whole lot.
Yes, I was
I-
just.
yeah.
Yes, sir. Okay.
So it's just, you got a lot of atoms cracking up there right now, correct?
Yes, sir.
Praise be to Allah.
Yes, sir. Why it's so important, this Dianetics class, and being honest, and all of that, because grief sometimes it takes you out, and I've seen some of my family members, I want to go in the grave, I want to go in the casket with it. No, you do not.
No, you don't.
Just stop.
As soon as
You don't
you
want
be
to go
fighting to
in
get
there.
up out of there. Stop it.
You know what I'm saying? And so I said, so those are my cognition. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Praise be to Allah. That's why it's so important for us to study for the sake of our own sanity. And we have to be focused on learning how to apply the technology to assist one another. Because when the minister departs, in my humble opinion, this is when many things will start to take place. You have there's a scripture that I think it's I can't remember which ayat it is. I want to say Surah 21, where it talks about the shock of the hour. And it describes what will happen during the shock of the hour. And the word in Arabic, for those that don't know, we do word clearing on the Arabic, and that's what brings us face to face with the tech of Dianetics. And in shock of the hour, the Arabic word is zalzala. And the word zalzala in Arabic means grief. The shock of the hour and the grief of the hour are actually one and the same. And it's right in harmony with what the minister spoke about in the Divine Destruction of America. Sister Angela, you got your hand up.
Yes, sir. So Sister Denise ignited some things. When you asked the question about how would we have been in the last few years, and it made me realize something. It made me realize, I started understanding what it means by degrees and by the heart of men. And I understood, really, she made me really understand full circle about the falling of the first and those that were in the mental hospital, because it all surrounds, and it still surrounds, by our faith. I say that because I probably would be in the place I was before Dianetics. I had been through, and this is where things are by degrees. I came in the Nation of Islam on the cusp of a nervous breakdown. I lost parents. I lost property. And this is all before Dianetics. All praises due to Allah. I bear witness that faith can carry you in places that we don't understand. However, at the same time, The minister's birth anniversary, the night that he had his feast with us, he gave us a gift of rebirth. And I see for Sister Angela where this tool is dynamic, is the capability to forgive, to see God in other people. Because my relationship with Allah was solidified when I asked Allah and I submitted my will to his will. That part is good, praise be to Allah. However, I lacked in the part of compassion for my sister and my brother, wanting for them what I want for myself, and being able to look into any face of a Black person and see God. And I was out and about yesterday at the funeral of my cousin, and I was looking at some people that were walking down the street very much affected on heroin and things of that nature. And by Allah's grace and mercy, I still saw Allah. So that part I had to bear witness of the teachings. The teachings, and like the people in the first, they had teachings that may not have been unlocked. The tool helped me unlock the power in the teachings to make me a better servant for Allah, and make the wholeness of me being a member or a registered believer or a knower in the Nation of Islam. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam. Thank you, Sister Angela, for sharing that. Sister Cheryl.
Just real quick, and Brother Luke would help me to, if I say this incorrect, I'm a paraphrase. Sister Mother Tynetta said, saviors. I think the last Saviors Day I saw her, I went to something where she was lecturing, we will send you saviors. When I look at what we're doing, we're preparing to be one of the saviors. We're going through our learning, trials and tribulations, so forth and so on. And one more thing, coming up in the Nation of Islam as a child, I love the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I wasn't gonna let my parents know that, though I was rebellious, but y'all supposed to laugh at that. But
No, not you.
oh yeah, I was terrible. But anyway, I loved Elijah Muhammad. He used to come on Wook. And in hindsight, he came to us at the level we could understand, because he was a 12-year-old girl. I would run to the high five to hear him, because the mosque was a temple then, and we had to leave at 1 o'clock. He would come on from 12 to 1. But here's a 12-year-old girl who loved him, to hear him, and she understood. He was coming at us at a level, and at each phase, we've advanced through what you're doing, what the minister's doing, all that. So that's the only thing I wanted to say, and that stays in my heart, that he knew how to approach us at the level we could understand. That's all I had to say.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Sister Cheryl.
Can I add something?
Who was that?
Sister Zakia.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Everybody that spoke had me thinking about why this world or the earth is oblong. Am I saying that right? Oblong?
Mm-hmm.
Could it be because of the imperfection, which is the brown germ, and how or why it had to be extracted, or for us to even get perfected to extract actually it back out, even with the deportation of the moon. I just lost my concluding thought, but it'll come back to me. Sorry about that.
The wobble.
Yeah, I just lost my whole thought.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Because I it just lost. I just got rid of me. I forgot it just now.
The wobble serves a purpose. The wobble serves a purpose, and okay. I'll give this quick. Actually, let's go with Sister Belinda first, and then I'll give my perspective on it. Go ahead, Sister Belinda.
I just had a quick testimony on the value of the check. I received a question the other day. For those who don't know, my husband transitioned. And so the person asked me if I was doing anything on the day to celebrate. I don't know what they said, are you doing anything on that day? And my response was, I had over 9,800 days of life. So why would I pick that one day to celebrate? And I attribute that to the text.
Yes,
That's it.
Yes, ma'am. So, you know, we celebrate every time we have our meetings. We're celebrating our beloved brother as well. So, because most of us here were influenced by, you know, those that remember the fundamentals, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Of the many things that I swear to you, that was one of the most life-changing topics I've ever heard a brother teach on, and I use that every day. So, yes, ma'am. Thank you, Sister Belinda. Go ahead, Brother Ahmad.
I'll yield to the sister if she would like to go first.
Okay, Sister Denise.
Oh, I just wanted to add that during the pandemic, the minister said to us to make your homes a sanctuary.
Mm-hmm.
And after the pandemic, people were having and still having so many like mental breakdown. I don't know what happened to me, what's going on. And I saw the value of making your home your sanctuary, where your prayer was right there. Your home, your front room was your where you go for prayer. Right there. And you put your rug down and you read your Quran like he was putting us in a sanctuary.
Mm-hmm.
That although all this stuff was happening, it wasn't touching us to me like everybody else. It was like he was keeping us stable.
Mm-hmm.
And others was excuse me, wilding out, just anything and everything. So that was the other I wanted to kind of, sort of add to that, how he guided us.
Mm-hmm.
And I was saying, oh my, like he knew this is what you're gonna need. Because you don't understand it now, but you're gonna need this.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir. Yeah, that was another
Yes, ma'am.
cognition. But
thank you, Sister Denise. And here's the reason why a wobble serves a good purpose. Imbalance serves a good purpose. Using the past, the whole COVID incident. Now that was an incident that we considered an imbalance, correct? How many of us met more Muslims through Zoom in the past 2 years? Now I've been in the nation now by God's grace for about 31 or 32 years. I've met more Muslims in the past 2 years through Zoom than I have met in my 30 years in the nation.
I bear witness, yes, sir.
Bear witness.
And not just meeting Muslims, but becoming family.
Yes, sir.
I have become, my family has grown more in the past 2 years than in the 30, because before you had to wait till you got the Savior's Day. You know, you got the Savior's Day, and then you really didn't, you would see each other during Savior's Day, and then, you always stopped at Drex and got your fish sandwich on your way out, for those that remember Drex. Those are the old school Muslims that remember Drex. But more family in the past, so it was a situation that for some, created a wobble or imbalance, but for those of us that were in the oven, there was one like the Son of Man that kept it warm, that kept it cool for us. Right?
Right.
So wobbles do serve a good purpose.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Brother Ahmad.
That was one of the connections I wanted to make in terms of Sister Zakia's input, and I put Romans 8:28 in the chat. And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God to them who are called according to his purpose. A humble, respectful correction. The shock of the hour is mentioned actually in Surah 22.
Thank you.
In ayats 1 through 22, and I put that in the chat for us to take note on. Thank you, sir.
I said Surah 29, right?
It was some other number. I don't remember.
It was, yeah, I think I said 21. I think I did say, but thank you for that correction. But Ahmad, thank you for that correction.
Yes, sir.
Real quick. Did I see my brother Salam? I saw like brother Salam.
Oh, and who was the sister's husband? Was it Basim?
Brother Batim.
Batim, I'm sorry. Oh, beautiful. May Allah forever be pleased. I agree. That wonderful.
Praise be to Allah.
I mean.
And your brother Salam?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I was on mute. Walaikum
Okay.
salam, my brother. How you been?
Wonderful, brother. Wonderful.
Yes, sir. I'm enjoying what I'm hearing.
Praise be to Allah. We haven't even got to the science yet, brother. We just having a family meeting right now. I see a brother Stanley Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum, sir. Can you hear me, brother Stanley? You're on mute. Hopefully he can come off mute. And we have a sister Jacinta. Sister Jacinta? Okay, maybe they can't come off mute. All right, we'll keep it moving. Go ahead, Sister Angela.
I just wanted to bear witness to what you said. Absolutely beautiful comment about the family expanding and what these Zooms have done. And I guess we got to see what these teachings has been telling us all this time. I mean, there is something beautiful that comes out of the unity among us when we really spend time and get to know each other and really become family. Just wanted to say that.
Yes, ma'am. And as you said that, here's what came to mind. None of us want to be around feces, correct?
Yes, sir.
None of us want to be around blood.
No, sir, unless it's compost.
Unless it's compost. But Allah says in the Holy Quran, from betwixt the feces and the blood, a drink agreeable to the drinker, correct?
Yes, sir.
There lies another demo kit that shows us, and it's right in harmony with what Brother Ahmad gave us. You know, all things work for good for those that love the Lord, but what do we have to do? We have to change our view. We have to look at it differently. Okay. All right, let's get back to germs here. Okay. Okay, we got that. Okay, here's where we get to the brown germ. What is this brown germ, or what could it be? We're gonna speculate. Can the brown germ be a mutation? That's the question. Okay. Now, why would we say it's a mutation? Because the brown germ is what causes individuals to be weak or wicked, correct? Yeah, with me, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, the word in Arabic is kada. The word kada is the word in Arabic. It means brown, and the word it means to cheat, to deceive, or to mislead. Okay. It means to make mistakes or to be incorrect. So this is all describing the held down 7 and aberration, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What is a mutation? A mutation in biology, changes that take place in the genes that the genes are what make up the hereditary material. And the mutations, the raw material of evolution, result from mistakes during replication, which is the copying of the DNA molecules. Without getting into, you know, that's something we might get into on Wednesday morning, getting into the genetics or DNA. But when DNA is replicated or duplicated, if a mistake comes in and there's a change in the code, then that change in the code will produce what would be a change in the protein chain. And the change in the protein chain actually will produce the different diseases. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
So anytime you change anything from original, you're producing a mutation. So the same principle applies on the genetic level. Okay. Sister Peggy.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Though, so does that include skin color brown or
brown? Those are also mutations, but now here's the thing. When you're dealing with skin color, this is when we get into the concept of what's called recessive, dominant, and recessive. That's a little different. Okay.
Different. Okay.
Yeah, it's a little bit different. When you deal with it, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just saying thank you.
No. That's a great question.
Oh, okay.
It is. So some mutations are positive. Some mutations are negative. Any change is considered a mutation. But when you study genetics, so the different skin colors can be considered types of mutations, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the mutations are negative. Okay. So when you look at, when you have dominant and recessive, in the Black, you have a dominant and recessive. And this is how the whole grafting process took place. They grafted out the dominant until they were just left with the recessive. Okay. So on one level, skin color, eye color, hair texture, these can be considered mutations, but not necessarily negative mutations. However, if you take a strand of DNA, you can change just what's called a codon and produce what's called cystic fibrosis, which is a very bad disease. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so mutations can produce positive or negative. But that was a good question. Brother Ahmad.
Here's one example that's interesting in terms of dominant, recessive, and mutation and grafting. I work at a couple community gardens, and we got gifted a tree, and it has 6 different grafts on one main. The language probably is not correct. I'm not very familiar with trees, more with crops, but we'll call it a branch or a center branch. I don't know what they call those. And it has 1, 2, 3, kind of like a menorah, I think. And they're all different. And so they're all apples though, but they were grafted to one single center bark. And pardon me for the terminology error, but I'm excited to steward it. I get to steward it and watch it grow. And so that's just something that's interesting. And it's probably not necessarily good or bad, just really different. So inshallah, that's somewhat helpful in terms of adding to the conversation.
So it's like one tree growing 6 different types of apples?
Yes, and they're going to have, intersectionality, I guess. One might be sweeter, or maybe it might result in the color of the skin or the size. And we're just really watching it to see what happens. So
that right there's that's a whole topic right there we could talk on. But that'll take us off on a real big tangent. I'll save that for another. I'll make sure I take a note for that for another time. Sister Patricia.
Yes, sir. The word mutation, wasn't that used when the COVID came out? And this was talk about how, when you talk about the molecules and how they connected and went different directions.
He did speak about, if anyone has any stable data on this, please add it. But I think he did, when he was speaking about the criterion, I think he did mention that it was going to mutate. Does anyone remember that?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. So he did say it was going to mutate, and that's just the way it works. You can't. The universe is a living organism, I guess on one level we could say. There's a consciousness there, and that consciousness evolves. When you deal with diseases and disease processes, those processes evolve. They, for the language of Dianetics, those processes want to survive as well. So when there's things that are produced to combat those processes, the processes learn how to adapt. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Brother Wadu.
Assalamu alaikum, sir, and family. I just wanted to add to the discussion on mutations that in the medical field, we use different terminology to be very specific, because if you're communicating with someone, they have to be very clear on what it is that you are instructing them or asking them to do in terms of patient care. So when we say mutation, to connect with a phrase and a term that our brother Bateen would often talk about in terms of gradients. So mutation is the term on the greater end of dysfunction, but there are terms of variation, so that skin color itself may not be necessarily classified as a mutation, but because there are variations in the genetics, as we are talking about genetics. And so just a quick kind of illustration of that is, we have, as you pointed out, the DNA, and you may have, let's just throw out a random number, 100 base pairs identifying a certain presentation that will be displayed based on those 100 base pairs. But any certain combination of those base pairs can give a variation of hue or coloring. So if there's a deleted base pair, so instead of 100, you have, let's say, 97. So now that's a true mutation, in that you don't have the adequate number of base pairs that you should have to produce one of the colors. So you may not get any color if something were so extreme. So that's one thought that I've been having. The other thought that I've had this evening, in terms of valences and connecting it with some of the chemistry that's already been discussed, if we can understand that every element on a chemical periodic table has its own unique properties. Some are good at sharing, like the chemical carbon. It can share with 4 different things and not be bothered by it. And it's in the same row with something like oxygen, and oxygen is very strong. It's going to pull everything to it. It's not going to share. It's going to say, no, you got something that I can use, and I'm going to take it from you and hold on to it. And they're good with each other, but they're comfortable being who they are. Carbon isn't fighting with the things that it shares with, whereas oxygen is going to take what it needs and hold on to it. So if we can see ourselves as individual chemicals, or elements, I should say, then if we can get in where we fit in for who we are as one of those elements, maybe I'm a very sharing person. Maybe the next person is a very giving person, like one of the electrolytes, sodium or potassium. Someone else may be, more strong-willed and hold on to things. So that, to me, was just another way of looking at some of the elements and the chemistry of valences. Thank you for allowing me to share.
Thank you, brother. So what you're saying is different atoms have different personalities.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Definitely.
Brother Lukman.
Yes, sir, Brother Salam.
The latest Final Call newspaper, the Honorable Minister Farrakhan go into the organism when he's dealing with GMO.
Okay.
with modified organism, genetically modified organism. He touched into that. Very interesting article. You should read it. Very interesting.
All right, put that mental note. Thank you, Brother Salam. Let's see. Okay. Now dealing with genetic mutation. When our lesson says to make weak and wicked, could it imply two things with respect to the text? One, weakness could imply sickness or disease caused by mutation, correct? Y'all with me?
Yes,
sir.
sir.
And then wicked implies aberrated mental state that has an equivalent illness. Now, why do we mention this? Remember when we went over the Hubbard chart of human evaluation? And we were able to go down the chart, I believe it's column E, medical range, and how it showed that there's certain illnesses that are connected to certain tone levels. Okay. I think it was last week what we dealt with, or it was last week or the week before, we dealt with problems number 1, 2, 5, and 6 in the problem book, and showed how the same illnesses in the problem book are discussed in Dianetics, and that when you look at the illnesses that are discussed, L. Ron Hubbard shows that how these illnesses correspond to tone levels, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so there's a relationship
Exactly.
between weakness as far as illness and mental state. And when you study holistic medicine, holistic medicine gets into that same concept. So therefore, we can say that the illness or sickness could be a manifestation of a dormant engram, which is not keyed in, or manifested engram, which is dramatization. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
In other words, if we have certain illnesses, because one thing that L. Ron Hubbard talked about in the Philadelphia Doctorate course, he says, and he went as far as to say that the specific location on the body where the illness is could be where the engram is stored. I thought that was really interesting. So the illnesses that we have could
Will you
be,
repeat that again, what you just said about where it's stored?
yes, in the Philadelphia Doctorate course, one thing that L. Ron Hubbard mentions is, because he does say, because early in the Dianetics, he talks about the reactive mind, and then further on in the text, he talks about what's called the genetic entity. L. Ron Hubbard has stated that the reactive mind is the physical body. He touches on it in book 1, where he talks about the cellular organism. No, the cell and the organism. Do you remember reading that in book 1? If you go back to those that read book 1, he talks about the cell and the organism, and he hints to it. And I think I have a quote on this presentation. But further down in the text, he goes as far as saying that the body itself is the engram bank. Okay. You can find this also, again, the book of Romans, chapter 7. No, chapter 7? Chapter 7. Where it talks about the law of my mind at war with the law of my members in the physical body. So there's a war going back and forth, a jihad, basically, an internal jihad between our physical body and our mind. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. Mind over matter.
That's what our daily battle is, mind over matter. Now here's where we're going to deal specifically with our Savior has arrived. Okay, our Savior has arrived. Pages 81 to pages 83. Before I go forward, Sister Jacinta, can you hear us, Sister Jacinta?
Yes, sir, I can. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. And who invited you to our meeting this evening?
Wa alaikum salam. Sister Anaya.
Sister, boy, I tell you, sister's recruiting, boy. I have to start giving that sister a stipend or something. Thank you, Sister Ania. Brother Stanley, assalamu alaikum, sir. Can you hear us?
Walaikum salam.
Well,
we
that
can
don't
hear
sound like a
y'all.
Stanley, huh?
My husband, he just stepped out for a second, but we listening to y'all. We can hear you. Here go
Okay,
my
and your name is? Walaikum salam, Brother Stanley. Who's that queen that we heard speaking?
That's my queen wife.
And her name is?
Sister Ruth Muhammad.
Sister Ruth. It's a pleasure to hear from both of y'all. Thank you for spending time with us.
Thank you, my dear brother. We're enjoying the conversation.
Praise be to Allah.
Praise
Okay.
be to Allah.
Page 81 to page 83. Let's take this walk through Our Savior Has Arrived and how it connects to the tech of Dianetics. Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad says, the days of Allah God, these are the days of the Son of Man and the days of the removal of the old world of evil, filth, and unrighteousness. We would call this stable data, correct?
Yes.
Okay, but now let's see if we can walk through it a little bit. Now, what are the Arabic words for evil, filth, and unrighteousness? And how do those words in Arabic connect to the tech of Dianetics? And how can we marry the supreme wisdom with the supreme tech, specifically with Our Savior Has Arrived? Do they correspond to Dianetic tech? Of course they do. Is there any agreement? We will see. The Arabic word for evil means to deteriorate, to grieve, to be upset, to be angry, or to engage in shameful activity. What area of the tone scale are we talking about when we talk about evil?
Below 2.0.
Yes, ma'am. We are 2.0 and below. Okay. The word for filth is really synonymous with evil, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at the word unrighteousness, the Arabic word is fasikun. It means straying from the right course, immoral, or fornication. So all three of these words really are talking about the same thing, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So we're at a time period where these things will be cleaned from the mind, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Now we know there's no mystery God, correct?
That's right.
So if there was a process by which these things were placed in our mind, there has to be a process in order to remove them, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, English lesson number C1 says, why does he fear now that he's a grown man? Because he was taught to eat the wrong food when he was a child, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. In there lies a principle that our aberrated behavior now as adults is a result of something that happened to us during our childhood, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Sure.
So what we do as adults now is nothing more than a dramatization of a valence that we get re-stimulated in as adults. Does that make sense?
That's right.
Sir.
Okay. Now, another way of looking at it is like this. Now, there's a doctor I'm going to quote out here. His name is Dr. Gabor Mate, and he's got 2 books that I'm actually in the process of reading. But the way he describes it is like this. As a child, if you're in an environment where you're being invalidated or someone else is enforcing something on you, as a child, you don't have the ability to retaliate against the individual, and you can't leave the environment, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So the child has to find a way to remain in that environment and create a mechanism by which to cope with the abuse that's taking place. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir.
You know, for some of us, we had to come up with an imaginary friend to help us cope with something that might have taken place in the home. So now whatever behavior, and we said this, I think we said this about a week or so ago. So a child having an imaginary friend is, on one level, it's understandable, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Within limits.
If within limits, right? Now, if anyone in this meeting were to talk about the imaginary friend, this is Belinda's. If we were to talk about the imaginary friend we have now, well, we would say that person's aberrated, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the point is, behaviors that were used as a child were coping mechanisms we used to survive in intolerable environment. But we still have some of those same mechanisms as adults, which we might call compulsions, obsessions, insanities, neuroses, or psychoses, correct?
Yes, sir.
Right.
So we have certain characteristics as adults, but they're based on something that happened to us when we were children. So when you look at these things are considered flow one, right? The 4 flows.
Yes, sir.
Flow one are the things that were done to us, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So these days mentioned by the Most High Elijah Muhammad is a time period where these things will be removed. Does everyone follow that so far?
That's right.
Yes, sir.
So who is responsible for the world being cleared, basically? Who is responsible for the removal of the evil, the filth, and unrighteousness? What'd you say, Brother Ahmad?
I'm sorry. I know that Scientologists, particularly among themselves anyway, take that as a task to literally clear the world.
Okay. And on one level, we could say that's true, but let's look at what the Most High Elijah Muhammad says. He says, these days of setting up a clean world under the guidance of the original people, Black nation. So that's true on one level. But who are they waiting for to wake up with the tech?
Come on.
Us.
Yes, sir. That's right.
Mother Tanetta Muhammad said that the missing capstone on the pyramid doesn't represent a missing stone, it represents a missing people.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. So beautifully.
So if this is to be done under the guidance of the original people, Black nation, and who is the world waiting for?
Yes.
There's a reason why the minister gave us this tech.
That's right.
They're waiting for us.
Now, Sister Cheryl, you've been involved with the org for a while, so I'm sure that you have some data. You have some data that we don't have access to that would bear witness that they're waiting for us, correct?
You have been absolutely correct, and I don't want to interject because I know I'm kind of like with you, but what you're saying is correct. We're the ones.
How can we prove that? Let's look at our lessons. Rule number 3 in the 13 rules of instruction says that the lessons that the Savior gave us is the fulfillment, correct?
That's right.
The
Yes,
word
sir.
fulfillment, when you clear the word fulfillment, means to bring into its final stage. So there's something about our lessons. The minister said it that the Dianetics is a tool because he said we've been given the lessons. It was like a safe with riches, but we lost the combination, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So there's something about our lessons. There's something about our supreme wisdom lessons, Lost Time Muslim lesson 1 and 2, English lesson C1, the problem book. There's something with regards to those lessons that contains that which will take this to the next level. Go ahead, Sister Cheryl.
And also, I just want to add as a comment, I feel I love to watch television, but I watch it with a different eye. They're letting little truths slip in. A few people know it is us. At the same token, I observe they're trying to steer us in a different direction for slow destruction. I sit and I watch this. This is not television. But you made the statement earlier. They let some truths come in, and you have to watch it with the third eye. They know it's us. They're trying to avoid that. They know who Minister Farrakhan is. They know it. So anyway, that's all I want to say, brother.
Well, thank you, Sister Cheryl. Thank you very much. Sister Patricia.
Yes, sir. You kind of remind me of Friday study group when we were going over self-improvement. The question was asked, when you first accepted the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, was there any part of the theology or program that you had difficulty with? And if so, what was it? And I said, when I first came in, I didn't understand why we had to recite the actual facts in the student enrollment. And what you just said kind of validated my thoughts of what was the reason why. Because when you said that we were given these teachings for a reason, and when you're going through the teachings and marrying the supreme wisdom with the supreme text, this is why it was so important for us to know the student enrollment and the actual facts, because it came to the present time that we had to have that balance there. And so I'm glad you brought that up, because it just verified and made it more valid what I was like answered the question for me again. Because I still at one point was like, why did we have to remember all this? What part is it going to do for us in our life? Now I know. Thank you for bringing that out and making it more plainer than where I was at.
No, thank you, Sister Patricia. Keep in mind that the lessons that we have been given, if you look on page 312 and page 313 of Closing the Gap, we're told that the supreme wisdom is the kindergarten of Master Muhammad's knowledge, correct? That means we would have to know a certain amount of information so we can get to the first grade, correct?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Brother Ahmad.
I'm trying to see if I could actually locate it, but I received from a sister who organizes auditors in my state, in my area, a letter that LRH wrote to or on behalf of kind of a solicitation to Black people to use the technology. If I can find it, I will send it to Brother Lukman, and inshallah he can, deliver it to someone.
I will send it out to everyone else, most definitely. Thank you, brother. Go ahead, Sister Tina.
Yes, sir. That's exactly what I was going to speak on. Wasn't there a letter written, something that L. Hubbard said in regards to when Black people get this technology, what will happen? I think you read that to us before, or we talked about that before in this class.
I think someone did read it before, most definitely. And I will make sure that it is sent out to everyone for Sister Jacinta and for Brother Stanley and Sister Ruth. If you could get your email to me, I can add you to the list so that whatever we send out, you'll receive that as well. I think I do have it. I got to figure out where I have it. But Brother Ahmad, if you have it and you can get it to me, I'll make sure the believers get it as well.
And he makes reference to in the first part of Science of Survival, he makes reference to 50,000 years ago and the 19
million insane.
19 million, right?
19 million insane. Well, I don't know where you got that number from, but
Yes, sir. Truth is truth.
So we have this group of people that have the responsibility, based on what the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad has says, for setting up a clean world. Because remember, in North America, we set the norms, and whatever we do here permeates worldwide, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so if we were to become and to set up a righteous world here, then that would permeate worldwide, yes?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, what is the purpose of this rebirth? Remember, we're pages 81 to page 83 of Our Savior Has Arrived. The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that this rebirth is in order to get rid of that wicked material in the very essence of the sperm of the Black man. Well, we've been talking about mutations the whole time, right?
That's right.
So we want to get rid of these mutations. is there a relationship between the mutations and the aberrated mind? Okay. The rebirth could correspond to the process achieved through auditing. And I'm going to explain that to give some data on that. Brother Ahmad, you have something for us?
I'm recruiting on Wednesdays. Remind me, please. It's 10 a.m. Eastern, correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Right. Sister Tina, did you have something?
Oh, no, sir. No,
No,
sir.
I got you. Don't worry about it.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Let me add some data to that. So now here's another way of looking at this. If auditing removes the chemistry of aberration, which upsets the chemical balance of the body, could the removal of these chemicals, the wicked material, change the biology of the individual? Now, who does not understand how auditing removes the chemistry of aberration? Who does not understand that process? Sister Peggy, you've never heard this before.
I've heard of it. I think I've heard of it before, but I don't know how that does it on a chemistry or cellular level.
Okay. Here's how it works. I'm going to try to explain this very quickly so we can get through the rest of this in a short amount of time. Every time we encounter a stressful situation, our body produces stress hormones, one of which is called adrenocorticotropic hormone, which is also known as ACTH. Now, L. Ron Hubbard mentions ACTH, I think, twice in book 1. He says ACTH, he described it as a glue that holds the engrams together, if I'm not mistaken. He did refer to it as like a glue. Now, what happens is this. Over time, when you look at how many stressful situations that you have gone through, then look at how the ACTH would accumulate in the body over a prolonged period of time. Science shows that the accumulation of this stress hormone in the body actually can reduce the immune system and produce hormonal imbalances. Does that make sense?
Oh, okay. Yes, I understand that.
Okay. But now here's the kicker. How do you remove the chemical from the body in order to restore the chemical balance? Science.
You have to have less stress.
No, that will eliminate new ACTH production, but how do you get rid of that which is already stored in the body?
Auditing, ain't it? Auditing?
But specifically, what about auditing removes the ACTH from the body?
Is it the reverie?
Discharging the engram, right?
But okay, so what does it mean when you say discharge the engram?
Releases it.
The release.
But what are you releasing?
The pain.
The charge.
What's the medium through which you're releasing the charge?
Tears.
The tears.
Yes,
Thank you, Brother
yes.
Wadu. I want to get specific because I want us to, I mean, I know you know, but I want to make this specific. The science has shown that tears of grief and tears of happiness have different chemistry.
That's right.
So when you cry because of happiness, that's a different chemistry. But when you cry tears of grief, those tears of grief have ACTH, and this is why, and those of us that have had the Dianetic processing, do you remember how lighter you felt after you got that good cry out?
Yeah.
Yes.
You remember when you used up that whole they gave you that little small box of Kleenex, you look at the box like, I'm gonna need more than that.
I know. Yes, sir, I remember.
And so what they say, that you felt lighter, right? You got rid of a lot of
That's right. That's right.
because you did. You got rid of a lot of ACTH. And if the more ACTH you get out of your body, what happens? Your body begins to heal. Now, why do women live longer than men because women cry and
all
men
the
don't.
time.
Okay.
You're right, brother Lukman, you're right.
Women cry and men don't. And what the science shows, and I think I have something in this presentation as well, the science shows that the more you bottle up the emotions, there are specific sicknesses that are
That's right.
connected to
Blood
specific
pressure, all that.
emotions.
Mhm.
Go ahead, brother doctor.
Cancer.
I just wanted to bear witness, sir, that cortisol, you said that Mr. Hubbard said is like a glue.
ACTH.
Cortisol, ACTH or the cortisol, either one of them being like a glue.
Yes, sir.
Reminds me of diabetes because glucose itself is a sticky substance. If anyone knows of people who are diabetics and their glucose spills into their urine, it becomes kind of sticky. So that bears witness to the terminology of it being like a glue.
Yes, yes, sir.
And then cortisol, that is also another stress hormone. This is our resident doctor. He keeps us in line on the chemistry aspect. But Brother Wadu, cortisol is also one of those other stress chemicals, correct?
Yes.
So cortisol is the end product after the ACTH is released. ACTH actually signals other organ in the body to release cortisol.
Mm-hmm. And this is why some of us, we work out and we don't lose weight because we're working out, but we're not getting rid of the stress that's keeping the cortisol, which is keeping the weight around our waist, correct?
Mm. Okay.
Brother Doctor, can you get some agreement on that one?
Yes, sir. Like the glue, it's holding on to cells.
So the fat is staying glued to us because of the stress.
Yes, sir.
So I'm just doing a drive-by at this gym.
Sister Tina.
You were speaking on tears of grief and tears of joy, having the chemistry and the result of the tears of joy. It made me, and how men usually don't cry, where women we do.
Yes.
It made me think of the minister and how he will cry tears of joy to us. When he was on death's door, how he said Fatima told him he was crying out to Allah of joy, not, oh, Allah saved me, but no, of gratitude. Thanking, yes, ma'am, thanking him. And there were other times, and another time is when someone told me, I didn't hear it for myself, but someone told me when it was on the Savior's Ramadan, when he did Ramadan, I think it was when the children, Sister Denise, I think, told me about this because I didn't get to hear it for myself, but the children were on there. And one of the brothers had the children on, and the children was doing something in Arabic or whatever they were doing, and the minister, he just, cried tears of joy. Sister Denise, I think she told me about that. Yeah. And other times I've cried tears of joy. And he's an example for us because look at how much he works. And in his condition with what they have done to him, his organs, he works and he is joyful in his work. And he works harder than any of us put together.
Ain't that the truth? Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Sister Tina.
Yeah. Well, look, man.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, because he was saying about how they wanted to silence the Muslims in slavery. They didn't want the children to know the native tongue. And when the children were reciting the Quran in Arabic, and what he was saying that, from the grave, our ancestors, how they were feeling about our babies finally learning the language, which is Arabic language. And he cried. I think he had to hold everybody crying with him, because he sees things are coming to pass. What the light, what they was trying to dispel, the light from the slaves receiving any sort of light, and then our children speaking Arabic. So yes, sir, he was crying about that. I just want to inject one book. It's called Women's Body, Women's Wisdom. And what do you say his name is? Deepak Chopra?
Deepak Chopra?
Yes, sir. He was talking about healing our past. And I was thinking about Dynetics, healing our past and the psychosomatic illnesses that are happening to us is from what has happened to us. Yes, sir. I just wanted to be witness to that. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right. Wicked material. This is from Dynetics. Several theories. Now, this is actually very interesting. This is from book 1, Dynetics book 1. Several theories could be postulated as to why the human mind evolved exactly as it did, but these are theories, and Dynetics is not concerned with structure. Okay. He says, a comment or two as a stimulation to future workers in that field might be made, however, wholly as a postulate that there is a definite connection between an electric-like energy in the body and the energy diffusion of cells undergoing injury. Okay, so what he's saying is, at a point of injury, that injury is producing an electric impulse. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
The body is made up of energy. He says a theory could be constructed along the lines that injured cells, further injuring their neighbors by a discharge of electric-like energy, force the development of a special cell which could act as a conduit to bleed off this painful charge. The conduit of cells might have become neurons, and the charge might have been better distributed, so through the body with less likelihood of local incapacitation at the point of the injury impact. Now, for example, I'll try to see if I can give an example of this. In our homes, in our apartments, we have what's called a breaker panel, correct?
Yes, sir.
And if there's too strong of a charge, if you have the microwave and the toaster on at the same time, it might flip the circuit, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that's because that wire in the wall is only rated to hold so much electricity. And if you're drawing too much power, you can actually make that wire heat up and it'll produce a fire behind the wall, correct?
Overload.
It'll overload that wire. When you look at injury, the same thing is happening. At the time of injury, and if you've ever been in a car accident, then you might remember this. There's a split second after that accident where there's a gap. There's a blank area where you don't remember what took place, correct?
That's correct. 6 of them.
Okay. So what takes place is the body has a mechanism so that when too much is happening, the way L. Ron Hubbard explains it, the analytical mind shuts off and the reactive mind turns on. And that is a safety mechanism so that you don't have too much going through your mind. Because if too much emotions go through a person at a specific time, that person can do something drastic. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. When you go through and there's so much going on, you know, what comes to my mind is, remember that movie Seven with Morgan Freeman and
Brad Pitt.
Brad Pitt.
Yes, sir. I
Remember
remember.
Brad Pitt at the end of the movie? Morgan Freeman said, "Don't look in the box."
Right.
Okay. Brad Pitt lost it, correct?
He did.
Yes, sir.
And so what happened was what? There was so much of an emotional charge there, he snapped. That can happen to any one of us.
Any one of us.
Okay. Which is why it's a good thing that we have the tech
Yes.
in conjunction with our Islam. But the point is, too much emotional energy can cause a person to snap. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
It was breakdown.
And,
Mhm.
you either break down or crack up, correct?
Yes, mental.
Okay. Now he says environmental factors can have an effect on genetic replication. Now remember, we're talking about the wicked material in the DNA, right? And we're
Yes.
talking about things in the environment that can affect the DNA.
Yes.
He says, I should emphasize, this is from a book called The Myth of Normal by Dr. Gabor Mate. I should emphasize that mothers aren't alone in transmitting chronic disturbances of the body's stress apparatus to the young. A stressful mother can transmit that stress to the children, correct?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
And this is why we're taught that when a woman is pregnant with a child, we should be very careful how we act around them, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And the minister has already told us that a woman that's expecting shouldn't even watch horror movies.
Or go to funerals.
Or go to funerals. It's like, you don't go stomping through the house when mom's making a cake or making biscuits, because you might do what? Make it fall, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, same concept. He says, also, despite the mother's best efforts, the fathers had transmitted disturbing effects through their sperm also. So he's saying that even if the mother's mind is correct and she's fine, if the father had disruptions in his life, he can transmit this through the sperm.
Yep, that's correct.
Okay? If you want some more information on this, pull up Dr. Joyce LeGroux, and she has videos on YouTube called PTSD, Post-Traumatic Slave Disorder.
Spell the last name.
LeGroux is L-A, I want to say G-R-U-E, I believe. Okay. Another study, now check this out. Another study observed higher rates of inflammation in African Americans than in Caucasians, an epigenetic effect that remained even when comparing those of the same socioeconomic level. You have white people in Caucasian, or black people in Caucasian, same level economically. However, we found that experiences with racism and discrimination accounted for more than 50% of the black-white difference in the activity of genes that increase inflammation. So the environment, and this reason why they keep us in the environments that we're in, it actually has a ripple effect through our genetic replication, and we're taking the outward racism and transcribing it in ourselves genetically and passing it on to our offspring.
Dr. Minister Davis said that.
So a quick summary. If the wicked material is the genetic mutation that takes place that causes sickness and disease and is copied on each cell division, then the coding for sickness remains in the body, because the cells replicate over a certain period of time. So the longer the wicked material, as the Most High Elijah Muhammad called it, as long as the wicked material remains in the body and the cells duplicate, then our aberrations are continually being duplicated. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But now, if it is possible that you can remove this wicked material, if it's removed and it cannot be replicated, then when the cells go through their replication, they duplicate without the aberrated or the mutated code. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So going clear could be part of a process that we might be able to consider on a genetic level as genetic cleansing. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yes.
So what would be the result of the rebirth? The Most High Elijah Muhammad says, that is why you are taught that you will be born again. Okay. You will be caused to grow into a new person, and the nature will be different. It will be the nature of righteousness, and then we cannot sin. in that kind of rebirth, it would be impossible for us to sin. Well, why do we sin? We don't sin necessarily because we choose to. It's part of the aberration of what happened to us in our childhood, right?
Yes. Yes,
Because
sir.
if I said to everyone here, if we had to choose between sinning and living a righteous life, what will we decide? What would we choose?
Righteous life.
Righteous life, right?
100%.
Okay. Well, all of us here have coins. COINS, right? We all have coins.
Yes.
Sister Tina, what are the coins?
C, compulsion. O, obsession. I, insanity. N, neurosis. S, psychosis.
That's
Even
it.
though it sounds like
Even though the P is silent. We all have coins. So we do the crazy things that we do, not because we want to. L. Ron Hubbard says in Dianetics, it's like being a marionette, like a puppet on the string, and our reactive mind causes us to do things that we don't want to do, but we do them, correct?
Yes.
There are times when I might have to go in, we have a fire. I might get a call, second alarm fire. So I tell my wife, okay, I got to go when we have a working structure fire. Now, I know doggone well, I don't need to, I might get out at 11:30, 12 o'clock. I know I don't need to eat at 12 o'clock at night. But for some reason, my reactive mind takes control of my car and I wind up at McDonald's or something. I don't want to go to McDonald's. I don't want to go get the donuts or the sweets. Somehow it just takes control of my car and I'm at the drive-thru. Do y'all understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Okay. This environment is designed to feed our aberrated mind. So
I
now,
believe that.
could the removal of our reactive mind lead to a healing of our physical body?
Oh, yes.
Definitely.
Okay. So that means, is there a connection between our mental healing and our physical healing?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, how long will the process take?
I hope it don't take 600 years.
No, sir. The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad says, after the removal of this world, after 20 years, you will not, I forgot the word be, you will not be able to follow and do that which you are now following and doing in the world today. Within 20 years, the thought of this world will vanish from your mind.
That's right.
So,
He said 83.
So there's a 20-year period that we're going to go through where you mean to tell me there's a 20-year period I'm going to go through and these things are going to be removed from my mind?
I bear witness, yes.
Okay. How can evil, filth, and unrighteousness vanish from our mind? That's called what? That's called auditing.
Yes.
That's called auditing. Well, who will be the author of this process? He says, a son of man will come to us to be the judge of the judgment day. This son of man will sit as a judge. Why he's called the son of man will have to be taught to you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you go watch the lecture, The Four Jesuses, he talks about a historical Jesus, then he talks about a man, and then a people.
Mm-hmm.
So the people will be doing the work that will bear witness to those other Jesuses that came before them. Does that make sense? Because they said there's a fifth one that could represent a people. I believe that's how he said it. Does that make sense?
The fifth one is somebody else. The fourth one represents the people. The fifth one is somebody else, which is him.
No, that's not what, correct me if I'm wrong. There's the historical Jesus. Then there's the Son of Man, meaning the Savior, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and then himself,
the fourth one is a people. And
but he talks about a fifth one, possibly.
Fifth one, right, himself, that's himself.
Oh, that's himself.
Right.
Okay, but he did mention five though.
Yes.
Okay, but the four are the four, but I'm in the process of studying that lecture right now.
But he's part of the people. a people. He's part of that. He's teaching the people, us.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. But the bottom line is we all have some work to do, don't we?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Quick and fast.
Mm-hmm. And now, what's the significance of this judge, the Son of Man? Because there are those that believe that L. Ron Hubbard had contact with the Savior. And as you go further into the text, there's too many coincidences. There's too many areas where the tech of Dianetics lines up with our supreme wisdom and the teachings of the Most High Elijah Muhammad. There's too many similarities.
That's right.
How can L. Ron Hubbard talk about a time track being 76 trillion years long? How can he talk about the 19 million insane in Science of Survival? How could he say in Dianetics some people had as many as 3 or 4 demons, and our lessons talk about bringing and presenting 4 devils? Do you see the coincidence?
Yes.
But there's no such thing as coincidence, right?
No coincidence, right? Yeah.
Okay. So now, has this been taught to us? Yes. The 4 Jesuses. That's the homework assignment. Go and study that lecture.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then I put it right there. Study the minister's lecture. Now, when will the process begin? Ooh, here's the $1 million question. When will the process begin?
2012.
Yes, sir. According to the sciences of Islam, the teachings of the Holy Quran, which are to be understood, the judgment is to take place between 1,380 and 1,400 years after the death of Muhammad, the son of Abdullah, correct?
Yes, sir.
He died in 632 AD. And if you add 1,380 to that, you get to the year 2012.
That's right.
1,400 years gives you 2032, correct?
Yes, he died 630 AD?
632.
632. Okay.
Now, what is the significance of the year 2012 with regards to tech? 2012 was the first year where Dianetics was offered on a large scale from Mos Mariam in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Based on the laws of arithmetic, the 20-year period, we're already halfway through it, a little over halfway through the time period, yes?
Yeah, we got 9 more years.
Okay. What did he say about the white people? He says a lot of white people go in the names of Allah, but there are a lot of white believers in Islam. I have met many of them, and they are sincere in their faith.
That's what he said.
He says there will be quite a few thousand in America. When the time comes, you will learn of them, but you will not learn of them at the present time, at the time that he said it back then.
That's right.
Now remember, Savior's Day 2011, where the minister spoke about the Dianetics. Wasn't that one of the first years where the Church of Scientology was also at our Savior's Day offering the book Dianetics?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did he not say, I learned about Dianetics about 35 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
Don't our lessons say we make them study 35 to 50 years so they can come among us and do trade?
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Excellent.
Doesn't Allah say in the Holy Quran that I will give you a merchandise that will save you from the chastisement?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
sir.
Let's get the actual fact on that.
What surah, what ayat is that?
Oh, I'm getting it right now, brother. It is Surah 61, ayat number 10. And it says, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, O you who believe, shall I lead you to a merchandise which will deliver you from a painful chastisement?
Mm.
Merchandise implies trading with someone else to receive something to remove that would produce a painful chastisement, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So with regards to these people in North America, who could they be? They could be the Scientologists. Well, why do you believe that? Because when you take all the elements and put them together, could this be connected to the pilgrimage? Now I'm connecting this to study guide, and here's where we land the plane now. If you look at Hajj, this is coming from study guide number 2, or the word resurrection. This is all coming from study guide number 2, building human potential. Could building human potential and processing have ARC or agreement? Is Dianetic processing and building human potential considered, they can be considered similar to one another? Okay. So is there a relationship between what the minister gives us in study guide number 2 with regards to the pilgrimage and resurrection and the Dianetic concept of the end phenomena? Okay. Cycle of action. If you look at study guide number 2, we begin in the grave, one part. And if you look at the word grave and you clear it, the word grave also means serious problem, correct? So you have a mental grave, which could be a serious problem, and then you have a physical grave. Chapter 6 of the book of Romans talks about those that were dead in sin. It doesn't say physical death. It says those that were dead in sin, and those are the ones that would be resurrected from the dead. Not talking about actual death. Dead in sin. All of us, before we came to the nation, were dead in sin, correct?
Yes, sir.
And now we still have one foot in the grave and one foot out, because we're not totally out yet, but we're not totally back where we used to be, correct?
Come on.
Okay. So then you have the breath of life, and then we're told that we're made into a living soul, correct? Does that make sense? Dianetics says the same thing, but it says it a little different. You don't begin in the grave, you begin low on the tone scale. Okay, low on the tone scale. Your change is called case gain. Does that make sense?
All right.
Case gain means you become more brighter, you have cognitions. You begin to think about things on a different level. And then you become an operating Satan. Living soul and OT are really the same thing. Does that make sense? Okay. And operating Satan on one level is a Satan, which is the spiritual side of, it's really this who we really are, having control over our physical body. Okay. Well, we don't have our body controlling us, we control our body. So Hajj means to overcome, to defeat, to advance, to justify, to provide proof, to give it evidence. It's the destination of a journey, a goal, a procedure, or a method. That's what the word Hajj means in Arabic. Qiyama means to ascend, to raise, to place in order, to correct, or to determine. Don't both of those words describe going up the tone scale? Now, what does the word end phenomena mean? Indicators that show that a chain of process is ended. So if you go through a process, you have what's called an end phenomena that shows that the process was successful. It shows in Dianetics that basic on that chain has been erased. And in Scientology that the PC has been released on the process being run. Has anyone ever had been processed and they had what's called the end phenomena explained to them?
No.
No?
Yes.
Okay. Sister Belinda, you've had that before?
Yes, sir.
Okay. When I went through the Purif down in Tampa, at the end of the process, you have what's called, there's something that takes place where they know, okay, here's where we stop the process. And once you get the end phenomena, they don't process you back past that. That's it. That's where you stop. You know, the saying is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, correct?
Yes, sir.
I share something, Dr. Bookman?
Go ahead, Brother Salam.
You know, you just mentioned Hajj, and one of the aspects of Hajj, while you're circling the Kaaba, you say, Labbaik Allah, Umma Labbaik, Labbaik Allah, Umma Labbaik. Is that similar to saying you're arriving at a point in your life where you're one with God?
Yes, sir. When we get up that tone scale, oh soul that is at rest,
yes.
Surah 89, ayat 27, oh soul at rest.
Yeah.
The best example I can give right now would be the minister.
Okay.
That would be the goal, to get to that point. But that's not the end of the journey.
No.
But that's a good place to be, correct?
Yes, sir.
Because now he's going to go to the next step or the next level of his journey, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The day I can go through processing and get rid of my reactive mind, when I leave the org, guess what I'm going to be saying? Labbaik Allah, labbaik.
Yeah,
That's what I'm going to be saying.
Oh Allah, here I am in your presence.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. In phenomena, here's the 4 indicators, and here's where we end it. You have what's called a floating needle. You have what's called cognition, very good indicators, and release. I'm going to explain these real quick and we'll end it. Floating needle means what? The idle, uninfluenced movements of the needle on the dial without any patterns or reactions in it. Now we're talking with the E meter. When you're on the cans, you have what's called a floating needle. The floating needle means that there's nothing there. It's been cleared out. It's a rhythmic sweep of the needle on the E meter dial at a slow, even pace. It is always accompanied by good indicators or very good indicators in the pre-clear. When you're on the cans, that's how they determine if you're good at that point. You have what's called the FN, or a floating needle. If you look at Surah 21, ayat 33, the word float is interesting. It means to float, to swim, or to praise Allah. So I guess being able to swim 9,000 miles means that you don't have any aberrations anymore. One way to look at it, maybe, I don't know. Just what came to my mind, floating and swimming and praising Allah, okay? Cognitions. Whenever I think of the word cognitions, I think of the ayats in the Holy Quran where it says gardens in which rivers flow. Cognition means a realization about life, an increased understanding of something. It's an awareness of awareness. A cognition is a realization about which the pre-clear feels relieved. How many times have you had a chance to receive cognitions during the Zoom meetings and it allowed your tone to go up? Because we can almost call those aha moments.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir.
That's also called case gain. At those aha moments, you've got back some of those attention units. Which means you've gotten a step closer on a gradient scale towards that source, or that the goal of life. And the goal of life is to what? To take our essence and join it with the essence of Allah. That's study guide number 2, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Cognition is of the highest importance in processing. Then you have what's called a cognition surge, the release of electrical charge, which goes along with a person having cognitions. Have you had cognitions that you just went through the roof with your tone?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So gardens in which, the gardens in which the rivers flow, when you have ideas that are now just flowing like water, you have cognition, you're thinking about things and your mind is just zooming.
Yes.
This is the garden in which rivers are flowing now. That's how I perceive it. That's the way I look at it.
Good point.
What are the very good indicators? Rising tone levels. You become more bright, cheerful, excited. Now you're what? You're tone level 3 going up. When you working is tone 20, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And a release. What is a release? A state which is achieved in auditing when a person separates from his reactive mind or some part of it, or a person who has achieved such a state. In a release, the bank is still there, but the person isn't sunk into it with all its somatics and depressions. Have you had, over the course of your time dealing with the Dianetics, achieved a release where there's certain things that just don't bother you anymore?
That's right.
Okay. That's the beauty of the tech. So in the words Hajj, Kiyama, and N phenomena can be represented as going up the tone scale, can we say that the tone scale in Dianetics can be used as a demo kit to represent the resurrection?
Yes, sir.
And this is one thing I've noticed. When you really look at what L. Ron Hubbard presented, he really gave us a physical representation of what our Islam gives us. Okay. Doesn't take anything away from what we already have. It's just that it's like, here you have our Islam and all the benefits, and he showed us the mathematics that bears witness to the Islam. He gave us, to me, Dianetics is almost like Islam in the form of mathematics and physics. To me, that's just my humble opinion. Go ahead, Sister Tina.
Yes, sir. What you just said, it's in the reading that you gave us in Our Savior Has Arrived, where the Honorable Elijah Muhammad talked about there are no spooks or spirit. He said, do not look for a spirit. He said, your mind will be clean.
That's what he said.
Brother Lukman, from your mind will be clean. The top of page 82.
Let's go to that.
Yes.
Top of page.
Yeah, 82.
I got it. Pull it up. He says, your mind will be clean. Ask the wise scholars and scientists, they will agree with me. Do not look for a spirit, a spook, or formless thing. The formless is what we think in our brain. It is formless until we make a form for it.
Yeah, right. Until we make a form for it. Yeah, that our thoughts, if we're aberrated, we'll make a form for it by what we do and say and cause other people to do and say because we're so aberrated. But if we're not aberrated and our mind is more clean, we will bring forth cleaner, cleaner things, cleaner results.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Also, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said at that point, we won't have to fast anymore.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And the last point is to also look at this. Allah teaches in the Holy Quran about the purified ones, correct?
Yes, sir.
And those that are purified, when you clear the word in Arabic, you come to the word kalasa, K-H-A-L-A-S-A. And the word kalasa in Arabic now, in an Arabic dictionary means to be, one of the meanings is to be clear. Okay.
What's the word? K-A-L-A-S-A?
K-H-A-L-A-S-A, kalasa.
To be clear.
One of the definitions in Arabic means to be clear. Okay. And with that, we will open the floor to any last comments, questions, or thoughts before we end our session for tonight.
Yes, sir. I had a huge cognition.
Okay, Sister Tina.
When we were talking about between 1380 and 1400, after the death of Prophet Muhammad, who died 632 AD. This is my first time. We've done this before. We've done this several times in class, but this is my first time actually writing it down on paper and looking at the math. And when I look at 2012 and 2030, I always thought that between it meant between 2032, you know. I wasn't looking at it that's the 20 years. Because there's a 20-year difference between 2012 and 2032. So we're in that 20-year period right now.
Yes, ma'am.
You're right.
I never realized that before. This is my first time looking at it actually like that. You still hear me, Brother
Yes,
Lukman?
ma'am. I'm listening to you.
The shock of the hour.
I am so excited because I'm actually, because, okay, we have the technology of Dianetics, but somebody's calling me. I'm trying to send these folks to voicemail because I got to say this. Because so much more is happening in this period. So my cognition is that this technology is affording us attention units so that we may better observe, concentrate, and submit to what the minister is telling us to do.
Go ahead, Sister Tina.
Because he just gave us instructions. I think it was one of the sisters mentioned earlier. I think it was Sister Angela talking about the gift he gave us for his birthday. You know, to pattern our life after his. That's an assignment. So we're in that 20-year period now. So we're getting instruction after instruction after instruction after instruction. And this technology is helping us to better observe, concentrate, and submit. That's my cognition. Oh my, praise.
Brother Lukman.
Wait, I got Sister Patricia and then Brother Larry. Go ahead, Sister Patricia.
Yes, sir. I was looking in my Supreme Wisdom just a few minutes ago in the front, and when we was talking about dates, I said, wow. When you were saying the rebirth, I thought about Form 4 that was mentioned earlier in our sessions before. And I looked and I signed the Form 4 July 31st, 2011. So the minister wanted us to rebirth again before we started this Dianet teachings.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like,
but remember,
wow.
remember 2011 was when he spoke about Dianetics as Savior's Day.
Yes, and then we signed the form the same year because he was preparing our mind to be submitted to what we're supposed to do with the Dianetics. So that was just all in plan. And also, I wanted to say this real quick. Did you get that email I sent to you about this cranial sacrotherapy?
I think I remember seeing something. I haven't had a chance to actually read it in depth yet, but I think I saw something in my email.
I believe this individual's name was John Upledger. He come out of Detroit, Michigan. And I believe that he took the touch assist, but he used it in a way when mostly with individuals who had brain injury. And it's a physical thing. You know, they cradle the head from the back of the head to try to not let that individual elapse into the injury, you know, like the auto injury, because some of them, you know, hit their heads and things like that. And I was thinking about it when I came across him accidentally last night. I was looking for something else. And I said, oh, he took the Dianetics. You know, we always take something and do a little spin on it, but you know, the original is the original. And he uses it, and he was charging big classes for this. I mean, not big classes, but a lot of money for these classes to take to be able to just help an individual. You know, I don't know what terminology to use, but it's mostly to take their mindset and kind of heal it, so they don't fall deeper into their accident. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am. It makes perfect sense.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I was just thinking about that. I sent it to you to overlook for you to view it to see if that's connected to the Dianetics.
Well, I'll definitely take a look at that. Thank you. Brother Larry.
Yes, sir. When you were speaking of cognitions, I immediately thought about the movie, The Minority Report.
Yes.
And the references was always to the precogs.
Yeah.
In the movie. And I said, wow, you know, that sounds like what Brother Lukman is talking about right there.
They
Precogs.
have the ability to gain information and arrest people for crimes that they were gonna commit.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Exactly.
Okay. Praise
Thank
be
you,
to
sir.
God. Yes, sir. Thank you, Brother Larry. Go ahead, Sister Peggy.
Okay, I have a question.
Mhm.
And the question is it an actual fact that the minister told us that we're not supposed to let them put us on those machines?
I have what, the e-meters?
Yes. And an auditor told me that.
Well, I'll say this. I heard, and this is what Brother Robin shared with us. And Brother Robin said that when the minister went on the e-meter, they saw a level of theta that they had never seen before. So I don't know where they got that information from. I have never heard. And I know that's one thing that Sister Naira is speaking very highly of as far as processing is concerned, is the cans. I'm also gonna say this, Brother Abdul Saeed, formerly Brother Minister Tony, out on the West Coast, if I'm not mistaken, he does solo auditing. And to my understanding, solo auditing is done by way of the cans.
And,
so
and
I've never heard that before.
And they were telling me that the minister said, don't let them do it because you don't need it. So you made me think about something else that she said when you said that the minister got on the machine and they saw something that very unusual. And that's what I was told. So okay, thank you.
Yeah, I've never heard that before. And I will say this. I have enough faith in the work that Sister Naira is doing that if the minister said not to do it, she wouldn't be promoting it. I'll say that. Brother Wadud and then Brother Salam.
Yes, sir. As you were guiding us into the injury, the physical injury of an engram in the brain, it made me to think on a biological level how if you tear your skin, you develop a scab, but then if you injure your thoughts and develop an engram, do we develop abnormal neurons in the process of that development of that injury? Just because I know from a physical standpoint that external injuries have internal components. So to be able to be injured and develop an engram, there should be a physical correlation of a physical element that develops as a result as well. So you said something about developing new neurons, but can we develop injured or abnormal, mutated, that would be the word, mutated neurons as a result of an engram?
I'm thinking that the illness itself, what they would call the psychosomatic illness, if I'm understanding your question correctly, the psychosomatic illness would be the physical representation of the engram. Does that make any sense?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You've discussed that aspect in the past. That's just a new thought that came to me throughout tonight's discussion. I'll have to do more research.
Well, you know we're gonna have to bounce that idea back and forth, brother, because that I'm always gonna pick your brain on stuff like that.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir. Definitely. Brother Salam, and then we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up. Go ahead, Brother Salam.
There's a point the unbelieving mama said our mind will be clear. There's also another point where it'll be a 20-year period that we won't remember the whole world. Do that 20-year period start at 2032, or is it starting now?
If you go based on the actual words of the Most High Elijah Muhammad, he says after that 20-year period, you won't remember. So I'm gonna go based on what he says, that after 2032, if we go through the process, then the things in that Dianetic language, we would say that the old stuff is processed out and filed in standard memory. But keep in mind, there's certain things that happened 20 years ago that we don't remember right now, correct?
Yes.
So it is possible to have certain things just not even in the mind anymore.
Yes, sir.
But based on his exact wording, he says after the 20-year period, the things of this world will be. So we're going through a process of cleaning, and then after the period, information will be removed. Okay. Last but not least, for our Sister Jacinta, Sister Ruth, and Brother Stanley, let me just pull up this information real quick and share this with you. Let me show you where we keep our if you want to check out the other videos that we have already loaded up. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. If you go to YouTube and you go to Supreme Wisdom Meets Supreme Technology, here are all the videos of the Zoom meetings that we have already covered. And there's more that I have to put up here. And this is the past meetings where we've connected the Supreme Wisdom, the Tech of Dianetics, the problem book, the lessons, Lost Found Muslim lesson 1 and 2. These are all placed right here, so you can go back and review them at your own convenience. Can you see those, family? Okay. And I'm going to end it with the words from the minister.
Wait. Look, I published something this weekend. Say
it's not clear.
praise. You can't handle it. The moment we accept praise for what God has done, we start losing the power and effect of what was done. Listen, human beings can't handle praise. And what God is going to do for us with the supreme wisdom and the supreme technology, is going to raise us from ignominy to greatness.
Everyone hear that?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Allahu Akbar.
Here's the last one. This is 50 seconds. Okay, we'll end it on this.
Because from this point on, every day at the mosque is a class day. We're all in the classroom of God, and we will prepare the study on both sides, the study of the technology and the study of the supreme wisdom. And then once we get to a certain point, I'm turning you loose on this word.
Yep, and we'll end it on that stable datum.
I love it. I love it.
So, Sister Jacinta, did you enjoy our presentation this evening?
Yes, sir, I did. Thank you so much. I'm sorry I can't converse further. I'm at work. I'm
No, that's
getting my
fine. I
assignment.
understand.
Okay, thank you so much.
We're thankful
Assalamu
that
alaikum, everyone.
Islam. Sister, Brother Stanley, Sister Ruth, did you get something out of our presentation this evening?
Absolutely, Brother Lukman. It was absolutely insightful. I learned from different perspectives of how to view, what the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, that how our nature will be different and how we will not be able to remember what went on in this world. Our mind will be clean and it will be impossible to sin. So I want to thank you all for sharing from your perspective of how you see and understand what the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad shared with us. And I pray to Allah that we just follow the blueprint that the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad laid down for us, because his nature is different. He doesn't have a brown germ. He have destroyed the brown germ, and that's why we are told in the supreme wisdom to copy the answer of Minister Elijah Muhammad. And I heard the minister say to us one day in the student ministry class, no, it was a believers meeting, I apologize. And he was talking about the supreme wisdom. He said, lesson number 1 is the first lesson that we must learn how to think like God. And we must memorize the lesson. And so the more we memorize the lessons, which we're going in the footsteps of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Why, did we run Yaqub and his maid devil from the root of civilization, the hot desert and the caves of West Asia, now called Europe? What does it mean, Eden rope? See the questions that the Savior asked the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and his answer. And we have to see it from past, present, and it will bless us to see the future. So when we memorize it, it's like downloading the spiritual app in our mind, how to think like God.
Go ahead.
You can't watch Netflix without the app. You can't actually, have Microsoft Word without the app. So we can't think like God until we start downloading the app. The spiritual app, lesson number 1. That's the first lesson. It doesn't mean it's the last lesson. So I thank Allah for Brother Batin. When I was his student minister here in College Park, I saw something in our brother that was so special. And I said, brother, I asked him, I said, would you be the auditing coordinator? I mean, he lit up. And Sister Belinda would tell you, from that day forward, he was just overjoyed and he helped us so much. And he was really my student minister. He was my counselor. And he gave me so much wisdom, because every student minister should take great pioneers and great ones like Brother Stanley Batin, whom I always loved, who always I can go to him when I was going through difficult times in the ministry, and he would get me out of that rut. And I knew that that brother had a gift that all of us should benefit from. And as a result, this beautiful dialogue, this beautiful supreme technology was born. And he had a perfect helpmeet in Sister Belinda. I tell you, they was the dynamic duo, boy. I tell you, when you see them together, they work so beautifully. And so I'm saying that to say that he always had in mind, you know, to marry the supreme wisdom with this wonderful technology. And I just want to just give praise and thanks to Allah for you, Brother Luke Man, and all those on the call, because I was edified. And that's really one of my favorite pages of Our Savior's Arrived. And I'm gonna close with this. I invited a student minister to teach in College Park one day. And then afterwards, we went to a pioneer's house and we enjoyed dinner together. And he said something that just shocked everyone. I mean, you can hear a pin drop on the carpet. He said adultery would be in the hereafter. He said, what? I was embarrassed. I was shocked with Luke Man. And it showed me that we have so much work to do. Because from exalted place, you know, you would say something like that. So what I did, I read Our Savior Has Arrived, page 81. He said, our mind will be clean. It would be impossible to sin. And from that point on, he just bore witness. And sometimes we need calls like this, because I heard the minister say at his dinner table one day, but Luke Man and believers, that dialoguing over the teachings of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad will produce the new Islam. And so you all are dialoguing on the teaching of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad in following the minister's instructions in terms of Dianetics. You're on to something. And I believe if we keep dialoguing along these lines, we'll produce the new Islam that will make us new. As the Bible says in Revelations, behold, I make all things new, and the former things will pass away. So I thank you all for the wonderful dialogue. I listened and learned. The reason why I wasn't so interactive with my wife is because we just got finished working several hours at our cafe we have here in College Park, Akira's Cafe. Our feet hurt. We've been serving and working all day. And when at the end of the shift, I saw the text, and that's it. I just said I gotta get on and just listen and get some high octane energy. And you all gave me the energy that I needed and my wife needed. And we thank Allah for you all, and we love y'all very much. Thank you.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you, brother. All right, family. With that, Sister Belinda, do you want to do the end of session processing?
Yes, sir. All right, family, let's prepare for end of session. Rapidly scheduled session just ended. Begin. Sketch over what you have been doing again with particular attention to how you have been sitting. Begin. Go over the period of the session with regard only to what you have been doing with your hands and things in the exterior world you have heard during this session. Begin. Fix your attention upon a pleasant object near you now. Begin. Thank you, family. That concludes the end of session, and I'll turn it back over to Brother Lukman.
Thank you, Sister Belinda.
You're welcome.
Salam, if you would give us the honors, brother, and close us out.
I would like for you to close out. I want to hear your voice today.
Yes, sir, I'll close us out.
Thank you, brother.
It's attention prayer. I seek refuge in Allah from the accursed Satan. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. All praise is due to Allah, Lord of the worlds, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful. Master of the day of judgment in which we now live, the alone that we serve, thine aid do we seek. Please, Allah, guide us on the straight path, the path upon whom thou hast bestowed favors, not the path upon whom thy wrath is brought down, nor those who go astray if they've heard thy teaching. Ameen.
Ameen. Ameen.
Ameen.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.